for a little more context and thought about all this, how it's evolving in the real world and how we can develop resilience in real life. I spoke with Dr. Matt James. He's a psychologist, also the president of Empowerment Partnerships, happens to be a dad who talked to his kids about this issue, and he had some good tips. It feels very much like this is something that's budding, that we don't know everything about just yet.
I would agree with that. I think that, psychology has come from a place where there's very linear thinking and very how do we find people that are resilient rather than teaching people how to be resilient. And one of the definite things that you can teach someone is to how to begin to see that there's no such thing as a failure, there's feedback. When a kid fails at something, if you call it failure, it brings it to completion. People who were very resilient saw a negative experience in a positive light, not necessarily making it positive, but really helping to find what is the lesson, what is the deeper learning here so that I can continue to improve in my life rather than thinking it's all done.
I wonder if you think in 2018, when we were talking so much about resilience, is it going up, going down, staying level to where we've seen in young people before?
This is a great point you bring up, and I asked my daughter this specific question, and she actually fed back to me something I had taught her earlier on. When you think of resilience more from a linear perspective, here's a negative situation, I'm moving on. The problem with that type of thinking is that if you ever encounter anything the same, you kind of think, maybe I didn't deal with it, maybe I didn't resolve it. And one of the things that my daughter fed back to me that I had shared with her when she was a little bit younger is spiraling upward. The idea of we revisit certain themes in our life. Are you spiraling upward? Are you getting better at dealing with bullying? So last week you blew up, but this week you were able to maintain your emotional state. Next week you'll probably be able to do even better. So Chance, in my opinion, I would absolutely agree that we're getting better at resilience because we're approaching it in a different way.
What are your best tips for building resilience?
Well, I would say the first one we've already talked about, and that is find the lesson, find the bigger learning. And actually, I told my son in high school, welcome the failures, because as an adult, I've sometimes learned more about my failures than I have about the times where things were just super easy. So welcome them, and then learn from them. As I shared with my daughter was a perfectionist at a very early age. And one of the studies that I read on how do you have better resilience is to totally avoid perfectionism. It's not about being perfect. It's about being your best, doing your best every day and constantly improving. And then I think the third tip is just really learning how to become more yourself. How do you let a little bit of that shine out? And building up that self-esteem that you feel confident with who you are.
I'm sure, you who have been in the business for a long time would agree. It's past due time that we're talking about this and actually putting the tools in our hands.
It is. I've heard some people recently in my trainings say, tell the younger generation to just suck it up. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That maybe worked for my generation. In this generation, I've seen some things on Instagram and I've seen things that my son has shown me directed towards other students. And I thought, we would never say those kind of things because we didn't have this shield of the internet to hide behind. Mm-hmm. And so I think that kids are dealing with something at a totally different level, and we can't apply our old way of thinking to it. We got to approach this in a totally new way and respect the fact that they need new tools.
It's true. Have you ever been hit with sticks and stones? They hurt and they bruise, and we all need to have that resilience.